Okay, I think we are live now. Keeping the lighting a little muted. It's going to be a calmer stream. Okay, and let me get the music going. As always, tell me if that's too loud or not loud enough. I hear it in my ears relatively loud. Okay, let me tell my Discord crew that I'm online. Let's see, let's find out. I'm so excited. This is a stream I've been wanting to do for a while. And I just felt the energy to get it out. And I'm very excited. Vector layers in Clip Studio Paint are, in fact, probably my favorite feature, and they help my style of art so much. Okay, give me a second. I need to figure out the URL to the stream. And let me clean up some things as well. Let's see. Oh, and then we'll get started with Clip Studio Paint. I'm excited for all my streams, but especially this one has got me going. Let's see. Delete the data. Okay, I think we're good there. Let me get my link. You know, I have to begin the stream always with a ceremony to get the live stream link into Discord. I gotta find a way of doing this more automatically. Can't share the link. Okay, let's paste it there for the Discord crew. I found that the Discord has over 777 users, members. So that was quite a surprise. I didn't think we had grown this much in the past year. Oops. And we may have, in fact, hopefully we'll get a slightly bigger audience for this. I did ask a few people. I posted in the Clip Studio Paint subreddit. I posted 10 minutes before the stream's supposed to begin because I wasn't intending the stream today. Okay, I need to change my AirPods, so give me a second. Okay. And let me put these to go recharge. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back, and my audio cut out, actually. What's that about? Okay. Oh, sorry, just need to try this again. Okay. For some reason, I'm not hearing the music, even though it is playing to you. It's strange. I'm gonna try turning off the music and starting it back up again. It's not a problem. I just prefer to have something in my ears because it sounds so weird to me to just leave these in, since it cancels all the room noise. Okay. Okay, okay, hang on. I do want to get this working correctly. There we go. Somehow I was sending to a different device and it got confused. Okay, vector layers in Clip Studio Paint. One of my favorite features. We're going to explore what they are, how they work. I think we'll go pretty deep. I don't think I've seen too many tutorials that go to this level of depth. And of course, as I do with all my streams, it's here for you to ask questions. So we'll take as long as needed. I'm sure this will go at least an hour. Okay, let's just make sure I've got the chat ready. Okay, just in case someone pops in, I need to say hello or answer some questions. Okay, so why vector layers? Why vector layers? If you're doing more of an illustration style, meaning you're doing line art, I think you'll find that vector layers are going to accelerate how fast you draw. Now, many of you I've seen are capable of not using vector layers and doing a great job. I'm surprised actually how well someone can avoid vector layers, or not use them, I should say, and what they can make without the benefit of vector layers. And definitely some people don't enjoy them, but I find that they're a massive accelerator. They really make my life so much simpler. And they're easy to use, and they give you all these abilities that you are difficult to get in raster layers and with bitmap layers. And Clip Studio Paint in particular does an amazing job. Now, for example, let's take Krita. Krita actually supports vector layers, but they're missing so many features that you see in Clip Studio Paint that it's hard to even call their support comparable. Maybe Krita has some features that are also interesting, but I've never found that it has what I need. If I recall reading the Clip Studio, I think one of the blog posts, and I think they said they are working on, sort of competing with Clip Studio Paint, which would be great to see. And this is one area I hope they really invest in. Okay, so let us begin. We'll begin from the basics, and I need, in order to do this now, I'm going to need to launch Clip. Okay, so give me a moment as I find Clip. I've launched it. Perfect. It's up, and I'm going to show you. There we go. There we go. And I've adjusted it so my face is covering the screen, but you're not missing anything underneath there. I don't think I'm going to be in the upper right corner of the screen ever. Okay, so that's working. Let me check now. I need to get some data files prepared. I believe they're all in my OneDrive. Yeah. The files are synced. Okay, good, good, good. Okay, great. And you know what? I need to get another laptop because I have sort of notes that I need to read as I'm talking to you. So give me a moment and I'll go get I need to get a tablet as well. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back, and let me connect my laptop. What happened was last year, I made a video about vector layers in Clip Studio, back last October actually. And I meant to, I asked for feedback from the Discord crew, and they provided me excellent feedback. But I also wanted to really take that and finish the video, because there were some rough spots. And, I realized it had been a year, so I'm really late in covering this topic. So that's why today I just woke up with a lot of energy, and I thought, okay, now is the time to complete where I started. So we'll do the stream, and I'm hoping we'll get questions. And actually, I'm also hoping people share their techniques, because I use vector layers in a certain way, and I'm sure there's maybe even tools I'm missing, because I don't know everything about Clip Studio. I would not consider myself a Clip Studio expert, but I will say I think I've covered this topic in a good amount of depth. Okay, moment. Let me open up PowerPoint. Because I'm actually going to use this for a couple of... There's a script with steps. I want to make sure I get the steps correct. So I've written down everything with screenshots. And yeah. Everything is good there. And I'm going to plug in. Let's see if you see what I'm supposed to be seeing here. Oh, they're not seeing the right thing. It's okay. I've got to configure Windows to do this correctly. It's duplicating. Let's extend. Let's keep changes. Identify to, sure. And now you should see the right thing when there we go. There we go. Yeah, so that's our topic today. Understanding vector layers. And the first thing we're going to do is just understand the basics. And this is chapter 1 is really the creation of vector layers and what they mean in relation to raster or bitmap layers. So this is going to be a basic chapter. And once we get through this, we'll just build chapter by chapter on this knowledge. Okay? So you can see clip. So this is version 4.0, though it doesn't matter. This is every feature I'm showing you, I think, is supported for quite a number of years in Clip Studio Paint. So you shouldn't feel any, you shouldn't have any problems trying to use it with your version. But I did want to be explicit with which version I am using. Okay. I'm plugged in my Wacom Intuos Pro Large 2025 edition. And let me just make sure. Oh, okay. It's moving the pen, but it's not configured quite correctly. So let me open up Wacom Center and make a few changes. I need to change the mapping to go to this rightmost screen. So select one display and the rightmost screen, apply. Force proportions, I always recommend with a pen tablet to turn that on. It shouldn't have too much of an effect at all on this tablet, but for many tablets it will definitely improve things. Okay, I think we're good. It's now in the right place. Great. Okay, great. So yeah, we're going to cover the basics. Let me load up my script and we'll talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to open up Clip Studio Paint, and I'm going to do the simplest thing, of course, that you can do in Clip Studio, which is create a new document. So let's do that. File, new, and I'm on a Mac, but everything I'm talking about will work on a PC. So I'm going to make this document a little bit smaller than I normally do. I'll just make it a 920 by 1080. That'll also make it easier to explain what's going on. And I'm going to make the paper color a light yellow. Just because it's just going to simplify, or light orange maybe just a little bit. Yeah, that's good. It'll just make it easier for you to see. Okay, so there, Clip Studio Paint has started, and I have a full HD 1920 by 1080 document. Okay, so let's just talk about the layers that we're most often used to, which are raster layers. Okay, and let's zoom in on the right, and you can see it's there's two layers that are created with this when this document is created. There's the paper layer on the bottom, that's the yellow part, and then there's a completely empty raster layer. It says 100% normal, meaning normal is the blending mode, and then it says layer 1. This is the default you get with the new Clip Studio Paint document. This is a raster layer. It supports bitmap data. That means it's just pixels. Okay. And let's just go ahead and draw. I'm going to pick my favorite pen of all time, the G pen. And let's make the brush size a little bigger, maybe. Oops, that's the real G pen. I want the... Oops. The Wacom driver has gotten confused. It's not moving the pen on the right screen. So give me a second. It's supposed to be mapping here, but the minute, let me just move the Wacom center over here. Okay, now it's working for some. That's weird. Every time I touch this monitor, it moves over to the middle monitor, which is very irritating. So, give me a second, and we will fix this problem, if we can. I'm gonna go ahead and... That's very irritating. Let's map to all displays and get back to it. Apply. Okay, it's moving correctly. That is weird. Okay, now it seems to be doing the right thing. Actually, it's not doing the right thing. It is very confused about what's going on. Highly unusual. Highly unusual. It's okay if this is having a problem. I may need to reinstall the Wacom driver, so let's just take a quick look. What an inauspicious start to my stream. But that's the nature of live streaming. Let's take a look at what we've got here. What is the driver version? Let's restart it. It's a very unusual behavior. Yeah, it's every click is... Oh, I see what's going on. This is interesting. Sorry, we're debugging now, Wacom. The pointer is moving on the correct place. But as soon as I click, it disappears. What you see disappears. It's actually swapping to the other screen. I wonder if I have some kind of mapping for click to change the display toggle. Let me undo some of these. Oh, that is weird. That is just weird. It's okay. It's okay. We can solve this problem. I'm not sure exactly how, but I think I can figure this out. Hey, Jerry. Good to see you. Vector layers indeed are the best friend of PenTap users. I 100% agree. I think they are amazing feature. It's one of the reasons I fell in love with Clip. Absolutely. Now, if I can just solve this problem. This is the craziest problem I've seen. I'm going to test with a different pen. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, that's weird. Oh, I'm going crazy with this Wacom driver. And I don't want to reboot the machine because it will close the stream, which is not what I want to do. So I have to figure out another solution. Okay, I think I got another solution. I am not going to demo it on this machine, which seems to be having all sorts of problems. I'm going to demo it on a different machine. So I just got to move a few things around. Sorry for the confusion here. I didn't anticipate this problem. I use this computer every day. I do have a MacBook Pro with Clip Studio installed, so I'll just use that. And it'll work just as well. It doesn't... there's no issue with using it. I may need to get another cable. Let's disconnect this. What a funny outcome. Okay. Try again tonight. Wacom allow. Don't save. That's Krita. Let me close Krita. I don't want to save this. No. I'll close my tablet tester. When it rains, it pours. Okay, now let's try to launch clip. And laptop. Oh, this isn't plugged in. No worries. We will fix that. There we go. Okay. Now let me change my displays. Where's that darn thing? System settings. And display. And I just want to do the arrangement here. Oh, I don't want a mirror. That's the first thing. Okay, and then now let's launch Wacom Center. And here, if I need to, it's not a problem to install Wacom Center because I can reboot this machine. It won't affect the stream at all. Now let's just make sure the mapping is working for me. Almost. Let's correct this. Okay. Yeah, it's working correctly. No weirdnesses. I'll have to investigate what's going on. It could be a driver issue that's related to the upgrade to Mac OS 26. Charlie Martian. Hey, it's so good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. And I apologize for the delay, Charlie. The machine I'm streaming from, which is what I was going to use, is just having a conniption with Clip Studio, with Wacom. Okay, I'm going to launch Clip Studio Paint. We'll restart this little adventure of ours. Okay. And I'm going to make I'll leave it. I'm going to make the other screen that you're seeing the main display. So that'll simplify a few things with clips, dialogues especially. Okay. And let's just let me launch Clip again. Okay, there we go. Clip Studio Paint, and this is version 4. And I don't think my face will get too much in the way. Let's create a new document. And again, what we're going to do is just create a 1920 by 1080 document. 1920 by 1080. And I'm going to set the background color, the paper color, to some kind of yellowish color. So I lay something out of the way here. Because it'll be a bit easier on your eyes than just a tan kind of color. Yeah, that's good. Otherwise, we'll be staring at this bright white light, which is the canvas all the time. Okay, that's a little more soothing, I hope. Okay, and now I gotta get this thing out of the way. Okay, so where did I leave off? I left off by saying we need to talk about these layers. Let me, you know what, I'm gonna move my, let's see, take my face off for a second. So this is Clip Studio Paint, and it's a 1920 by 1080 document. And Clip Studio Paint by default creates 2 layers, okay? Oops, wrong mouse. And let's bring up the layers here to make it a little more clear. Right? First is the paper layer, that's the beige color. Then there's a raster layer or a bitmap layer, okay? And that means there are pixels in this layer. Now this is empty right now, and I'm just gonna go ahead and draw a stroke, okay? And let's see. And I think I have some stabilization on. No, I don't. Okay. Let's pick the G pen. Whoops. Control Z. Let's get there, and I want the G pen. Then I want it slightly bigger. I don't need to be 200 big. Doesn't need to be that crazy. And the color set the, let's do it red for now. Kind of red. And in general, in this video, I'm going to have it so that when I draw a red stroke, it's always a raster. And when it's a black stroke, it's always a vector. I'll try to stick to that rule. It'll be good to be consistent for this video. So let's go ahead and draw this red stroke. And I should have picked a bigger brush. 100, there we go. Okay. And I'm not using my Pro Pen 3. So it's not fun to draw that stroke. Let me pick. There's my Pro Pen 3. Looks nice, okay? So I'm pressing thin and thick, and you can see exactly how it's behaving, okay? So you're not judging whether the stroke is good or bad. Right now, we're just trying to take a look at it, okay? Now, I do think, though, I may be doing something funny with the pressure. Hey, Nick Tyler. You don't need the pen to work with vectors. That's true, but in this case, it'll matter for my video. But the good point. In fact, Nick, you're right. In fact, lots of the time when I'm doing vector layers, I don't use the pen at all. I just use the mouse. So that's a great point. So what I want to show you is just for those, again, people who are new to vector layers, I'm going to zoom in, and this is what you see. Okay. Now you see pixels. Of course, I drew pixels, so you see pixels when I zoom in. Okay. Now, let's create a vector layer, and there's several ways to do it. Let me get my notes here. Well, let's see. Get this laptop out of the way. Okay. So there's several ways of creating a vector layer, and I'm going to show, in this video, I'll generally try to show the multiple ways you can do things. The first way is just go up here and say new layer, and raster layers bitmaps, and there's a new vector layer here, right? And I think there's actually a way to create one here. Right, it's these two icons. So this one here, I'm going to hover, it says new raster layer, but the one next to it, which has a kind of a node there, says new vector layer. I generally, in this video, I'm going to create things without using these kind of like icon shortcuts. I'll try to click on the menus so it's just much more obvious what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to go layer, new layer, and I'm going to say vector layer. And it gives you some options, name of course, but expression color, I'm going to leave it to color, which is the default, and blending mode normal, which again is the default. And then we'll just hit OK. Now the first thing is you can see the vector layer actually is designated. It's kind of shown in the UI a little differently. There's that, remember this node icon here? That node is also shown, that little box is shown also in the vector layer. So you can easily tell when it's a raster or a vector layer, just because you see that node, okay? So now you know how to do that. let's see. 3 polygons. Thanks for joining us, 3 polygons. The auto continuation of lines, start, end, is practical in fixing. Yes, I 100%, 3 polygons. That's one of the, and I'll talk about that at length when we get to that section. That is the big speed thing for me. And as a hint, I have a hard time if I draw, I'll illustrate it, but I have a hard time being perfect with the beginning and end. And that feature of vector layers means I don't have to be perfect anymore. I can make mistakes, and the mistakes are easily fixable. You still prefer raster? Interesting. Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. I know some people they prefer working with raster. Skitsy in the Discord is like that. He was drawing for me, and I couldn't believe how precise his strokes were. All raster. Amazing. Maybe he'll watch this video and he'll become a vector dude. Okay, so I'm going to draw a vector stroke now, and I'm going to change the color to black. And then let's just do it here again. Remember, you're not concerned whether the stroke looks good or not. That's not what we're trying to do here. Okay, we are just concerned with the way the vectors are rendered. Before I go further, I do want to make sure there's nothing weird with the pressure, because I was fooling around with pressure so much. So give me a second, and let me go to the preferences here. Where is it? Clip Studio Paint. I think it's here. Pen pressure, that's what I want to make sure there's nothing weird with the... Yeah, there was, okay. I thought it felt weird when I was drawing, so I have this really crazy pressure curve there. Okay, now my pen, okay. But let's zoom in and take a look. And this is the first surprise for a lot of people. The vector line, the vector stroke in black. Oops, I drew a thing there. Oops. Where is my... Hang on. There we go. If we zoom in, we see something really odd with the vector stroke, and that is, it's also pixelated. And this is probably our first... This might confuse people, because a lot of times we'll hear vector strokes or vector layers described as mathematically perfect. They have infinite resolution. And here I've zoomed into this theoretically infinite resolution vector, and what do you see? You see pixels. So this is the first thing we need to level set on, is what is actually happening here? Why do I see pixels? Why don't I see it as an infinitely smooth curve, no matter how much I zoom in? Some apps do that, by the way. But Clip Studio Paint is really optimized around the idea of working in a raster space. So what's happening here is the mathematical curve of this vector is being rendered. Whenever I zoom in, it's being rendered at the document resolution, right? And they'll be more obvious as we go along. Right now, if you're just looking at this, you might not even be able to tell this was in a vector layer. So that's the first question. How can we even tell it is a vector layer? Since by our eyes, there doesn't seem to be any difference, at least right now. Well, this is the first thing that will be useful, but I don't normally turn this on all the time, but it's extremely useful for this video. Let me find out how to do this. I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to click, where is that? Show Vector Paths. Now, notice it says, I want to make sure everyone knows all the settings. Show all control points are there. Okay, that's going to be very important, so that should be checked. And then show all vector paths on vector layers. Okay, so now what do you see? In the middle of the black stroke, which is a vector layer, you see these very thin lines with these little control points or nodes, right? This is evidence that it's a vector layer. This is the most obvious evidence. And you can see how many nodes there are, okay? And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to redraw now these two lines, vector and raster, and you'll see now, because right now just zooming in, nothing is showing up as a difference. But once I redraw them, and it'll be more obvious why I'm redrawing them when we get through it. You'll see how they operate differently, and the advantages will first start coming into focus. Okay, let me clear off both layers by hitting delete, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to pick a different color actually for the raster stroke. I'm going to pick a darker blue like that, because I want it's going to be confusing to see the red nodes in the vector layer with red strokes below it. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. Okay. Again, we're not here talking about the prettiness of the stroke. It's just a simple stroke that is a raster layer. Now I go to the vector layer. So blue will be our raster color. And then I'm going to pick black. And I'm going to do a very similar stroke, roughly speaking in the same place. Okay. And since I've turned on those nodes, you can see the nodes are shown when I made that stroke. Blue is raster, black is vector. So again, if we zoom in, we don't seem to notice anything. So that's our first kind of confusing thing. Okay. Now, I want to talk about these nodes. These nodes are visible, but right now I can't. If I click here, I'm just going to draw. I can't edit these nodes. We will get to node editing later in the video. Hang on a second. I got to move this. There's so many laptops in front of me. It's getting confusing. There we go. That should be a little bit easier. Okay. So we will get to node editing later. Now, let us... Okay, we're going to do some things to help reveal the difference between rasters and vectors, or at least see how they behave. And the first is scaling. So I'm going to scale, I'm going to select both layers by shift, I think it's shift click, or I forgot what it is on Mac. Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong keyboard, of course. No wonder I was getting confused. There we go. So both layers are selected. And then I'm going to go up here to this, what is this called? The scale and rotate button. Okay. So I'll click, and then you'll see these handles. So let's test out our theories about how these operate. Let's scale it down. Okay. And I'll go ahead and hit OK. And zoom in. Well, at least to your eyes, they don't look any different. They're both pixelated at the same level. So scaling down, it will actually reveal some differences, but it's just in this particular case, it's not obvious to see what those differences are. Okay. Now let's try scaling up. So again, I'm going to undo this change. Let's zoom out a little bit since we need to scale. Oops. I'm going to move the keyboard out of the way because I'm going to touch this keyboard all night, getting confused. Okay, so let me undo that. Let's see, Jerry's got a question. How does one activate the view of those nodes when I do a vector line doesn't show? Okay, Jerry, follow along with me. It is, it's under the view menu, okay? And you want to scroll down to show vector paths. And you want two items checked. Show all vector paths on vector layers. So check that one. And check show all control points. So both should be checked. So I'll watch the chat to see if you can see them. Okay. So I've got both layers selected. Oh, Charlie Martian has a comment. Let's take a look. I draw everything for my work with vector layers. I do use raster layers for my rough sketches. Yeah, same thing, Charlie. I spend a lot of time quickly in raster layers for sketching, though sometimes I actually sketch in a vector layer as well, because it's easy to fix certain kinds of things. But I'm sort of 50-50 on sketching, I'd say. Sometimes raster, sometimes vector. Okay. It works now, Jerry? Okay, terrific. So I've got both layers selected. And I'm going to go back here and click on this area, this scale rotate tool. Okay, so I'll click. And now I'm going to zoom out a little bit and I'm going to drag the handles. I'm really going to make it big, okay? Like crazy big. And I hit OK, and let's just see what happened. Okay, I'll probably zoom in right here. Well, you're now starting to see the difference, right? There's the same amount of pixelation between the raster and the vector layer, but there's some weird irregularity now in the raster, the blue stroke. So this is one example. Let's see if we can find another example. Can you see it? That kind of, there's a slight, it's a very regular pattern, right? And the edge is not nice, right? Even though they're both, let's compare it close here. Take a look at this edge here on the vector, the black stroke, and the edge on the blue stroke. This is blurry and blotchy, okay? So scaling up revealed to you what? That a vector layer preserves its quality with respect to the document resolution, but rasters don't, because they're being scaled and they're not being redrawn. The vector is actually being redrawn, meaning re-rendered rather, because I drew it, the app is re-rendering it at whatever resolution the document needs. Okay, so let's now do one more operation, because this was an interesting one. And again, the reason I did it is to help you see where we start seeing difficulties with these two. Okay, I'm gonna go back to scale and rotate, and I'm gonna rotate this like 45 degrees. 45 because it'll cause the problems. It'll cause problems. Okay, and let's zoom in again. Let's take a look at what, do we see anything weird? Well, we're seeing a little bit of roughness here. The vector line, the black one, looks fine, but we will see some, maybe in this case it's not here. Actually, if I zoom in here, this is looking a bit odd here. This pixel actually got a bit darker here, a bit unusual. And the edge is not perfect. There's some inconsistency in the edge, right? This will get even worse if I, and let me undo this. I'm gonna scale it up, but I'm gonna actually make it, I'm gonna rotate it, but I'm gonna rotate it at its kind of a weirder angle, not quite 45. Okay, kind of one that's, and I'm gonna increase the size too, just to help create the weirdness. Hopefully it'll be much more obvious. Okay. Now let's zoom in. Oops, I erased some of this. Again, it's fuzzy. There's a little bit of a weird pattern there. Hey, Rain, thanks for joining us. And Rain is asking a good question. Is there any negative factors in using vectors? I've noticed many of my favorite artists only draw in raster. There are some effects you can't get in a vector layer. But I think in terms of drawing lines, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of a negative. Like you wouldn't use it for like an airbrush. I mean, you can, which I'll show you. But as long as you're using it for just traditional kind of strokes, then I don't think there's any disadvantage. Maybe we'll discover one on the way here, and maybe people tell us why they don't use vector layers. But yeah, as for me, for just illustrations, I don't see any disadvantage. And they have all sorts of advantages. We're going to explore every kind of advantage, actually. Okay. Now, one thing else happened here, which is quite interesting. I just want you to pay attention to it. Let me undo. Okay. And I'm going to select them both again. And you can see how thick the lines are and how thick they are relative to each other. Now, this is going to sound so silly because you saw it, but I just want to emphasize the point. When I shrunk them, notice that they were proportionally both shrunk correctly. Like they're both relatively, compared to each other, they're holding their widths correctly, right? And here, as I scale them up, the same thing has happened. They're maintaining the widths, okay? And this is what you'd intuitively expect, But in fact, it's not always what you want, right? Let me give you an example, okay? Let me just go ahead and give you an example. Let's cancel this. Okay, I'm going to create a new doc or do I need to create a new doc? I'm just going to hide these layers. I don't want to create a new doc. I want you to imagine I'm going to create a new vector. I'm going to create a new raster layer, okay? And I'm going to draw in a blue color, right? And nothing, I'm not going to draw anything serious. Let me turn off the stabilization. I don't want to do anything weird there. Okay, so what I want to draw is, I don't know, we'll just make it like a, you know, my favorite, let me do a smaller brush here. That's a little too big for me. It'll hurt my point. This is a 10 pixel brush, okay? So I'll draw, you know, my favorite guy, right? Apu. And I'm drawing this badly, so please don't criticize me. Okay. So this is a vector layer. Sorry, this is a raster layer. Okay. Now let me ask a question. This is supposed to be like a cartoon, right? And if I want to scale this up, the lines are getting thicker. You see that, okay? Now the question is, or if I scale it down, the lines are getting thinner. But often, if you're doing an illustration, you don't want the lines to shrink or grow. You want them to stay 5 pixels or 3 pixels, whatever. You don't want that to change. Well, a raster layer, when you're sizing, cannot do that for you. It is going to get bigger or smaller because that's just the way rasters work. But vectors give you a choice. Okay, here we have a few comments here. 3Polygon says, I find that I have a fresher stroke in raster, more expressive. I find it interesting. Interesting. Most of the time it's because they overlook vectors. Yeah, I think some do, honestly. Some don't even know auto actions in CSP. That's true. And of auto actions, I don't use them much these days, but for a while there I was doing really complex layer stuff, and I could automate a lot with the actions. They were amazing. Some people like the granularity of some pencil's textures, but for manga line art, vector inking has, many advantages. I press O and then select a line, and it shows the nodes for that specific line. You know, I've never used that, Charlie, so I'll try it out in a little bit later. Remind me if I don't get back to that. I came from inking in Illustrator that is amazing for vector inking, but even with that, I always preferred raster inking. And then, and it looks like 3Polygons already knows about auto actions. Vectors take much more time to create, more tedious workflow, not good for all. So I think I'm gonna make my case, Nick, that in Clip Studio, vectors don't have those problems. Or I don't think they do, and I'll try to give you evidence of why that's the case. Okay. And the key thing is I don't think they take any more time to create, and I think you'll see that the workflow is pretty easy and not any different from raster for illustration. Right. So I'll try to. That's my goal for this video. And Jerry raises a point. For me, it isn't tedious. I have a way to not mess around with control points too much. And that's the benefit of Clip Studio Paint's vector layers. You do not have to mess around with the control points. I'm showing you the control points just so you can always tell when something is a vector or not, but you don't have to deal with it, okay? And yeah, Jerry, I agree, it does intimidate a lot of artists. Okay, so getting back to what I was going to show about the scaling, let me hide this layer, and I'm going to create a vector layer, okay? Oops, clicking on the wrong thing. Let's see, I'm gonna click here and create a new vector layer. Okay. Now, I'm gonna draw the same exact kind of thing. I'm gonna make the stroke black though. And let's just see. I'm gonna make it a little thicker. Okay, okay. So that is a vector layer. You can see the nodes. Now, if I do this, again, oops, if I scaled it up, you can see the stroke got thicker. If I scale it down, the stroke got thinner, almost invisible now. Well, now we're in a conundrum, right? Like, we want the stroke size to stay the same. And in fact, vector layers let you do that. So notice that when I, let me cancel this for a second. I'm going to just switch to the G pen. Okay, now I'm going to click this again. Okay, and it's selected this. Take a look under tool properties, right? And this is, now that I clicked on the scale rotate, it actually shows you for layer 4, which is what I'm on, these kinds of things you can do, like rotating, flip it left and right, blah, blah. But you've got an option called change vector width. If I unclick that, now let me do it. What do you notice? The width of the vector line isn't changing. It's staying exactly the same, okay? So that's the first power with the vector layer, is that you have control about how the scaling works. And this is great for scenarios where you're drawing a character, you need to enlarge it, but the character's drawn like the rest of your drawing with, I don't know, 5 pixel brush. But if you enlarge it, it would end up being a 7 pixel stroke. So you need to, with the raster, you'd have to redraw it or do something. With the vector layer, you have complete control. You can have it grow the width of the stroke, or you can have it stay constant. That's a fantastic feature. Okay, let's see, we got some by vector inking, do you mean, I think he's asking Nick, are you, actually, I think I missed something. Free Polygon says, I think it depends on the type of artwork to choose vector inking or raster. By vector inking, do you mean the classic bold, no texture line? Vectors are widely used and designed for printing. It has some advantages from TechPoint. And no, CSP is not even a vector editor. It just has some vector-based tools. Yeah, it's not, like CSP's vector support is not, you wouldn't use it for Illustrator type stuff. Trust me, I've tried. It's not good for that. It is not designed to do that. It is good for illustration type strokes, right? Again, my claim is, if you're using raster and you're drawing a lot of illustration, check out the vectors, because I think it's kind of a situation where it's basically all benefits, or very close to all benefits at no cost. Okay? And you get so many more abilities with the vector stroke. So, but yeah, I would not classify CSP as a vector editor. It just has very good support for vectors for illustration. Okay, so I showed you how these strokes can change their widths. Oh, I know what was causing that problem. Sorry, rotation was not looking. Never mind. I'll talk about that later. Let me see if I can show it to you. Maybe. I wanted to show you more how rasters can screw up rotation, and I'm going to do it now. Okay. So let's erase these 2 layers. No, cancel this. Let's get these 2 layers out of here. Delete layer. Yeah, now I know what the problem was. Okay, so I'm going to do the same rotation and show you how bad raster layers. What was keeping the raster layer, it was still making it ugly, but wasn't ugly enough, was the setting here called interpolation method. So this is trying to do a good job of when things are at weird angles. But if you change it to hard edges, nearest neighbor, you'll really get crazy. Now watch this. Oops, I need to select both of them. My mistake. Cancel. Let's select both. Cancel. Cancel. Okay. Let's select both layers. Scale and transform. Let's make sure the setting is, we want nearest neighbor, hard edges, okay? And I move it 45 degrees. You can, if you played close attention, you can see the problem immediately. Let's zoom in and see what happened. Right, there you go. So this is what's actually happening to the raster. The vector layer is perfect, right? But the raster gets all these weird artifacts right? Because it really isn't designed for easy rotation. The setting, which was not using hard edges before, it was using like clean edges or something, will process this to make it better. But this is how rasters don't survive rotation very well, right? They are never clean in a rotation. Let's see. Okay, so thanks for your patience. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is, let's undo this. I'm going to draw 4 lines. Let me hide these previous layers here. And where's that new layer? There we go. Now I have one vector layer that is visible in this document. Okay. Now, what do we want to do? I'm just going to show you 4 lines, and I'm going to show you how to modify vector layers. This is something that is hard with raster layers. They're difficult to modify in the ways I'm going to show you. It can be done. There's certainly ways to do it, and some of which are not that hard, but as I go on and on, you're going to see vector layers are, you can fix them or change them after you've drawn them in all sorts of ways, okay? So let's just draw some lines here. I'm just going to draw, doesn't matter really, but what they look like. Maybe I do want them a little bit bigger, though. Yeah, like that. These aren't supposed to be pretty lines. These are just supposed to be lines that I can just show you things. Okay, so the first question is, I think if this was a raster layer, I think we'd have an idea how to edit the color of the lines. There are different methods, like you can lock the alpha and paint over in blue or red or whatever. But how would I change all these lines to purple? Well, vector layers actually let you do this pretty easily, okay? So let me just make sure I get to my notes. There's several ways, okay? And this I use a lot, and I'll show you how I use it. I want all these to be blue, okay? So the thing I do is I go here into, remember nothing is selected. I'm going to select blue, okay? It's a relatively bright blue. And in one of these menus, there's Edit, Convert to Drawing Color. And then the current vector layer will have all the colors of every stroke in that layer will be set to blue. Okay, so that's an easy way. Now, how do I use this feature? I actually, let me create a new layer. Sometimes when I'm drawing, I have a lot of, I'm just gonna draw a bunch of vector layer, a bunch of lines. There's lots of stuff going on here, okay? And I'm trying to draw some addition to this. And so what I'll do is, just to help me understand where the new lines are, because if I draw a black line that's, in the middle of all this, I'm like, okay, did the black line end in the middle there correctly? Did it begin in the right place or end? Like it kind of gets lost, right? Because it's a black line on top of a whole bunch of other black lines. So I actually, sometimes, if it's getting kind of complicated, I'll actually draw a blue line. It's the new stroke, right? And then, since it's in the blue line's in the correct place, then I use that Edit Drawing Color, Convert to Drawing Color to change it to black, right? So that's how I can sometimes use this feature, okay? So Edit, Change the Drawing Color is one way. There are other ways, okay? And the other way begins with something called the Object tool. And let me erase this real quick and go back to my 3 strokes here. Okay, now the Object tool is this thing, okay? It's like a little node with the Operation tool. We want to click there, right? And let me just, let me go through my documentation to make sure I'm clicking in the right places, the Operation tool, okay. And then we click on Object. So it's Operation and then Object, okay. There's also for other operations like select layer, light table, edit timeline. I'm not going to talk about those. We want to focus on object. If you're not seeing this, it's probably because when you select these other tools, the icon changes. So just be aware of that, okay? So we want operation. Let's see, Charlie says, I draw a lot of art in CSP, then export out as BMP and convert it to vector via CorelDRAW. Well, you know, you can export the vectors here. Well, I guess it depends on what you're trying to draw, Charlie. If it's line art, you might try the vector export. Vector Eraser is good. We're going to talk about Vector Eraser a lot in this video. Okay, so there's another way to change the color is, there's this, remember again, I went to operation, then object, and you can actually, oops, wrong mouse. You can change the color here. They're not even selected, by the way. You can just drag in the color wheel and change the colors. So that's way number 2, right? Similarly, you can actually edit this main color. So it's black now. Let's click on here and make it red. Okay? Either that or the color wheel, do the same thing. Okay? So for now, I'll change it to back to black. Okay? So now you have 3 different ways of changing the color. Okay? And again, I didn't have to select. It's changing everything in the current vector layer. Okay. We covered the color wheel. Now, we're going to talk about the size of the strokes all the time. So I just want to show you how you can edit the size of the stroke. There's this one way. I don't use this way, actually. I use a different way, but this is a valid, and some of you might prefer it. Now it says the brush size is 60, which is what I had drawn these strokes with, but actually, you can actually change it here, right? So this is something you can't do with raster things. You just can't, right? There's just no ability to make this change that way. Okay, so that's another thing you can do. Another thing you can do that I never use, but you should be aware, is you can change the brush shape. So right now it's set to like nothing, right? I think it's technically set to pen, but you can actually change it to other things like spray, right? So again, not useful for my kind of work, but this is another example of how you can edit the vector stroke after you've drawn it. And there's many other edits you can make, okay? So I'll go back to pen, and notice, you should see this just to show you, you're not stuck with hard edges. You can use, that's an airbrush rendering, right? Here's, again, a watercolor one. It's not great, but there's more than just hard-edged things, right? So I'll change it back to pen, okay? Okay, and then let's take our next. We did that. Okay, I've shown you how to edit specific strokes. I'm going to take a look inside here to see if there's anything else I want to focus on. Any other options? I think I'll leave it this way now. Let's see, Charlie's got a tip for me. You can shortcut to rotate with Control. I didn't know that. Let's try it out. Control T. Is it not working? Control T or Option T. Thank you, Charlie. I didn't know that. Fantastic. That'll accelerate my work for sure. And Jerry says you can even add custom brushes there. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I've never used any custom brushes. Let's see. Oh, that one is awesome. See, I think you're talking about some of the stroke edits that I just did, right? Okay, so now this was all the strokes. Now we're going to deal with specific strokes, okay? Because you don't need to edit all strokes every time, but sometimes you just need to edit 1 or 2 strokes. So let's deal with that. And the way we do that is, let me just look here. And I want to get back to object, I believe. let's see. I need to put this up here. Oops, I'm trying to, oh, clicking on the wrong thing. Sorry, my mistake. I have two mice because I have two computers and I'm always picking up the wrong mouse. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to find a certain setting here, which I don't know where it is. Operation on transparent. Oh, I see. Hang on. Okay, let's get back there. So I wanted to find these settings that I'm looking for. Unfortunately, I'm having trouble seeing them. There we go. They were hidden. Whew, I was worried there. I couldn't see those settings. I didn't realize the this other window was blocking it. Okay, so there are settings here that I would generally recommend to configure. I'm going to talk about which ones they are. The first is, let me just make sure. Under the operation for transparent part, so you click on that, I disable switch to different layer. I find that to be a very confusing when this is enabled to edit nodes, okay? And then the second thing is I enable select area by dragging, okay? And then I make sure the option there is set to objects in this layer, okay? And I leave the bottom one as enable for 2D camera. That doesn't matter, so I won't talk about it. So again, I disable switch to different layer. I enable select area by dragging, and I make sure the option within select area by dragging is set to objects in this layer, okay? Got it? So now when I'm on this operation object, I can select things. And so let's just try. If I select on this stroke, now what do you see? The little tiny control points are now these bigger white objects. And in fact, you can edit these like this. You can actually move and drag them around. Now, in general, this kind of node editing is, I don't do it here, and I don't do it very often. I think there's other tools that'll help you rather than editing it node by node, okay? And we'll show those tools. Okay, so to unselect, I should have actually unselected it. Hang on. Oh yeah, sorry, the selection mode, I leave it to new selection. That's the other change, okay? So what does that mean? If I select an object, to unselect it, I just try to click or any place else, okay? So this works for me very naturally. Select, unselect, select, unselect. Now you can also drag select, okay? You don't need to drag the entire object, you just need to touch a piece of it, it will select, okay? And of course, you can multi-select, okay? So those settings work the best for me. Let's see if there's any questions. Let's see, Jerry's showing me. This is for adding a new brush preset, it looks like. Choose the desired brush, sub 2 detail brush shape, add to presets. Got it, got it. I'm not very experimental with brush shapes. I just live with the G pen and the, what's the other one called? The Milli pen. That's my life, okay? So, now, when you select these, like this, oops. Again, I'm using the wrong mouse. Okay. When you select these, let's select one of them. You get the normal rotation handles and scaling things. And again, we know what's going to happen here, right? You can scale them and they'll preserve their resolution per the document's resolution. Okay, so let's Control Z undo. Okay. Again, I normally don't edit this way. I edit with different tools and we'll get there. And now we're going to do a little bit of editing with the control points, okay? And so how do you do that if you don't do it here, okay? And there's a special tool for this. And what you want is, it's this tool. It's called the, not figure, it's this one. It's called the correct line tool, okay? So I'm going to click on it. And let's see if I can create some space here so you can see all the menu options. There are like 6 or 7 different kinds of corrections. Pinch, simplify, connect, adjust line width, redraw vector line, and redraw vector line width. I'll go through most of these actually, because this is where you can, again, you can do things that raster lines cannot do. Let's do pinch, okay? Pinch is, I don't know if it's the right word. I mean, it's not, I feel like it's a weird word, but once you see it, it'll be obvious, okay? So there's an amount of pinch and there's an amount of effect range, okay? So let's go ahead and just play with it, and I'm gonna just go in the middle of this, and I'm clicking down, and you see what it did? It moved the node. Now notice I wasn't in that special node editing mode, right? It just moved it. And you're probably thinking this is pretty ugly, and it is. But where it starts getting interesting is when you change the amount of pinch. Let's make it extreme, okay? What do you notice? Do you see the difference? Like, it's sort of, it acted on the overall object more, but it's still deforming it in a subtle way, right? So this is when the pinch is all the way over to the right. Let's try the pinch in the middle and see what happens. Right? It moved more nodes. When I was pinching with the very low number, it only basically moved 1 node, right? So this is one way you can modify your strokes without redrawing the entire. Sometimes, you know, you don't put the hand or finger or whatever when you're drawing in the right place. You can just kind of nudge it over a little bit, right? And again, something that will be very hard with a raster stroke, right? So for example, yeah, actually, this is actually a good example here. If I had accidentally put in this like little bump there, how would I fix it? I would use this pinch tool, and depending on how acute it is, that problem, I would just push it right back. That's it, right? And you can do all sorts of things. You don't have to just push and pull. You can really make some wild changes. But I just do little fixes with that, okay? That's one way. Okay, next we have simplify vector line, okay? Actually, let me double check and make sure I have any more notes for these items here. Oh, yeah, sorry. What is this option? There's also control point. Okay, this is it's just that same old mode we saw before, right? And this is just direct editing node by node. It's almost like the version of pinch with the least amount of pinch, meaning the least setting for pinch, right? So I never use this for moving nodes around. Occasionally, I will move a node like this. That I do. I move the ends sometimes like this. Okay? Now there's a whole bunch of options here though that are more interesting for me. So for example, let me move one of these nodes really far away. Okay? I'll move it like here. And you're noticing some interesting things here. Number one, it didn't add more nodes, but I can do that. I can go to add control point, and then a new control point is added there, okay? I can, of course, delete control points, right? Let's go delete a few here, right? And you can do things here like switch corner. Switch corner means, and it's probably easiest to notice when you have lines like this. Let me try to show you. Let me move one of the control points over here. Yeah, okay, so obviously this is rounded, but what if you didn't want it to be round, you want it to be sharp? Well, you have an option here. You can go switch corner, and then watch this. Now it's sharp, okay? You see the difference, right? And sometimes, oops, I don't think it has much of an effect, at least not on these edges. But in the middle, it'll have an effect. Here's another example. Let's make this one sharper, right? You see? And then we cover delete. You can also adjust line width. This is yet another way to adjust line width. So this one's a weird one. So I'm going to just select this, and I'm just going to click on the node, okay, or click near it. And I'm moving the mouse up and down. You see what's happening? Or left and right might be better, right? That's another interactive way of changing the width. Now, I don't normally do this, but it's there for you if you need it, okay? So I think, yeah, left and right will do it better than up and down. Okay, so you can interactively change the width. Can you, I don't know if you can select multiple nodes here. Let me try it actually. Can you do that? I don't think so. I don't think I can select like multiple nodes to change the width. You just have to change it sort of a little bit at a time, okay? There's more ways to change the width of the stroke, so we'll get to that. Okay, let me do some some undoing. Okay, next, I want to talk about simplify vector line. So there's lots of nodes here, and some of these we may even find to be redundant. But with the simplify vector line subtool, the simplification is set to like 2 here, okay? Watch this. You see there are fewer nodes there, right? Now, if you do it, it is going to lose. The shape will transform. It'll try to preserve the shape, but if you get too simple, let me undo these changes. I'll show you what I mean. If you max out the simplicity, watch what happens. See, that's too much, maybe, right? So you can pick how much you want. Okay, so this is very useful. Some brushes will, depending on your configurations for smoothing, they'll create lots of little points, like tons of them, and you can use the simplify tool. And the good thing about the simplify tool is you can simplify a part of the stroke or the entire stroke, right? Like that was the entire stroke. I can just do it like this. Now, there's a setting here on simplify. I don't think it's visible right now, so let's take a look here. Yeah, I'm going to enable this setting. Why don't I see it here? That's weird. I don't see this process whole line. You don't want, you generally want that off because it's easier just to paint how much you want to process. Okay. I'm just wondering, why don't I see that's shown in this? Oh, it's here. It's under the simplify thing, right? So I generally do not keep this unchecked, process whole line. There are other options as well. Explore it, but that is a very useful tool. Okay. We covered adjust line width. Oh, connection. So connection's huge. So let's try it. Typically, I'm going to delete these, or I'll create a new layer. Okay, so I use this one all the time, and I'm going to explain the scenario for you first. Let's get my favorite pen, the infamous. I'm going to use just a G pen. Actually, I'm going to use the Milli pen, whatever the hell it's called. Oh, it's a marker. Yeah, Milli pen. Milli, yeah, this one. Okay, it's just a flat width pen. Okay, I'm gonna make it a little bigger for you. So, all sorts of reasons this come up. Normally, if it's a very long line, I might have trouble doing it in one stroke. So I will draw the first part of the line and then continue like this. Now I need to connect them. So that's what I use, that under fix or a correct line tool, I use connect vector lines. So let's zoom in and just see what's actually happening here. So I'm in connect vector lines, and if I just paint here, it's not connecting. Why is that, right? There's usually there's just too much distance between the two. So I try to get it a little closer. Oops, trying to move this thing. Why is it not? Oh, I'm doing adjust line width. No wonder. Let me select move control points. I just get them close enough and then go back to connect vector line, and there, it actually connected, right? And you can see it connected because if I try to move them apart, you'll see I can't, right? They're actually literally connected now. So that's a very useful tool for me, okay? And in the middle of a whole bunch of editing, you'll end up with lines you want to connect. So you need to learn about this tool. Now this tool does have some interesting behaviors though. Let me disconnect these, and I'll move them close again because I need them to work. But the tool is sometimes kind of sensitive. Let me hit connect vector lines, and you'll notice there's some options here, right? So let me just show you one of the things that actually happens. If this line, remember sometimes I draw with blue, right? Let me select this line. Oops, I've got that. I don't have the right one selected. Now, okay, so I select that one. I'll change it to blue. Now let's see what happens when I try to connect it. We'll go to the correct line tool, connect vector line, and then what? It's not connecting. And that's frustrating. Oh, maybe it's because the points aren't close enough. So let's bring the points closer. Well, they're right on top of each other, still not connecting. You can clearly see they're not connecting. What's going on? What's happening is that certain differences in the line will cause it not to connect. In this case, color. But with the connect lines options, you can say connect lines with different properties. So watch this. See? Now it has to pick a color, so it picked the black one in this case. So I would suggest you turn that on. And I believe if you don't turn it on, even things like, let me make this black again and move this control point over. So it's black, it's almost touching, but I believe if the width is not the same, it will actually trigger the same problem. So let us, let me do it the previous way I showed you. I'll change the brush width like this. Oops, I changed for everything. Let me select this and now change the brush width. So they're different sizes, okay? And let's move the control point over. So they should connect, right? Let's see if they do. And this one did it. This one did it. But colors tend to make it not work, right? That's why I think you should set connect lines with different properties. And at least color is one of the properties that would prevent connection. Okay, great. Let's see what's the next up on the agenda here. We covered pinching, we covered simplifying. Oh, redrawing. Yeah, this is a wild one. I don't often do this one, but it's useful to know about, and it might really be very important for you, okay? So let's delete this, and I'm gonna draw a new line. And I don't need this thing to be that. I need my marker brush, okay? So what we'll do, we'll draw my favorite Peepo, okay? So maybe I'm really not satisfied with the way this is supposed to be like, you draw the mouse there. That way everyone will understand what's going on here. I might think, you know what, I didn't like the way this jaw ended underneath the mouth like that. I want it to go out further. I don't want to do node by node editing. That would be crazy. What are my options? Let's see, Jerry has a comment. That's awesome. There are times when the vector bucket leaks because it's very sensitive. And this, we're going to talk about the leaking. That's coming up, trust me. Because there's, again, multiple techniques. So how can I make this? There's a couple of problems here all over the place, okay? First of all, I overshot. Okay, so that's irritating. In several places, the lines go where they shouldn't go. And this one didn't go, generally, I just didn't draw it long enough. So what are the options here? I don't want to do node by node. Well, I can go into the correct line tool and I can use, again, I don't often use this. I can use redraw vector line, okay? So I'm just gonna I'm taking the pointer here and I'm gonna begin right in the middle of this line and I'm pressing down now. Now watch what happens. Right? You can actually like kind of tweak the line, okay? And here's another mess up right here, right? I'm gonna try to redraw it. So I'm clicking on the line and then it's gonna, right? Now notice though, it'll temporarily add a bunch of nodes and try to simplify it back, okay? Let me show you what that did again. See, look at how many nodes there are here. There's like 6. I'm going to click in the middle. Watch what happens to all the nodes. See, there's like a million nodes now, right? Now, if I let go, they're going to go away. And so let's go ahead and correct this this frog. Okay, so I don't want this to go up. And this is where you get the problems here. It's hard to control it in a meaningful way sometimes, right? That's why I don't normally use this tool. Like, it doesn't do a great job of changing lengths, right? It's much better for like moving things a little bit. You see that? You can just nudge it out of the way a little bit. But I find that this tends to create weird effects, right? Like, I think the stuff, when you keep editing it, it just looks weird, okay? So I tend not to use this very often, and when I do use it, I work with these the simplify thing, right? Let's see if these options here, fix end, makes any difference. I've actually never tried that. Let's try this. Yeah. It's just weird how it works sometimes. You can stroke a little bit, like I'm not going all the way, and it'll, sometimes it'll shorten the line, but I just don't like it, honestly, for that kind of thing. Anyway, that's another option for you, which is the redraw vector line, okay? Now, what about adjusting line width? There's another way, of course, to adjust the line width, okay? And that is, you can actually use a tool here called Adjust Line Width. Surprise, surprise. And you get many more options here. Many more options here. You get thicken, narrow, scale up, scale down, and fix width. So I drew all of this in like, I don't know, a 10 pixel brush, okay? So let's pick the easiest one, okay? I'm going to just go here on fixed width, and I'm going to set this to 11. Now nothing's happening, right? Why is nothing happening? Because I haven't selected this this guy here, okay? So I need to select that. So I'm gonna go to this object tool, and I'm gonna drag select. Now it says 10 because that's all the strokes we're using 10, and here I can go up or down. It's going down thinner, and I'm going up thicker. Great for those situations when I've done this many times. I draw and I accidentally pick I tweaked the brush size to be 2 pixels bigger, and I didn't notice it until halfway through the drawing. I can just come back to and select everything in my drawing and say go back to 10 points or 10 pixels. Just happens. So this is the simple one. Let's go back to the I didn't show you the right thing. I meant brush size. I showed you brush. I meant to see correct line. So this is fixed width. And this is where you can paint. See that? Whatever you paint on will achieve exactly that line width. Okay? Now the other option is you can scale, actually instead of scale, let me do thicken, okay? Now thicken works as a percentage. So I want it to be a little thicker, okay? And I believe what I needed, to make it 10% thicker, I think I need to do 1.1, which is 110%, okay? I think I'm right here. I paint over, now watch carefully, I paint it once, twice, 3 times. Do you see the effect? You see it's getting just a little bit thicker, right? So if you're in a situation where you need to, you don't want, you need a little bit of line variation for some emphasis. Let me do it here on this head here. You can localize the change very nicely, right? Now it will introduce more points sometimes. So you have to be aware of that because it has to do that to get some of it just added 2 points in those 2 strokes. So be aware of that. You might need to simplify after this. You can also narrow. And so I'll narrow by, oh sorry, that was thicken, that was narrow. I'll leave it at 10. Now narrow is going by, how can I say, percentages. I thought thicken was going by percentages as well, but I may have confused myself. Actually, let me double check this. I thought this was going by percentage, so let me try percentage value. Instead of 10, I would normally do like 0.9. Yeah, I think this is correct. Okay, now let's try it. Yeah, it's just thinning it out little by little. Can you see it? So they're both done by a relative amount. Okay. So I'll undo all these changes. Actually, I don't need to undo all these changes. I can just, change fix width and change it to 10 and fix all these problems that I introduced. Okay, let's do that. There we go. Back to 10 points, right? And I can just fix over the entire thing here. I'll quickly do that. I love this that you can paint the fix. It's really cool. Then there's scale up width, which is similar, but I forget. Maybe this is the one that's percentage, and narrow and thicken are actually pixel numbers. I'd have to double check. Yeah, I think narrow and thicken are actually the pixel numbers, and then scale up, scale down to the percentages. So you get the same idea. You just pick a number and you can thin it out, okay? Either by relative percentage or an exact number of pixels. Okay. Next, what do we got? What do we have here? We did connecting. The strokes. Oh, erasing. Now we get to the fun part. Erasing. So I said I made a whole bunch of mistakes here. How can we fix the problems? And we're going to use an eraser. But we got to carefully understand how to erase with vector layers, okay? So I'm going to go pick, I'm going to do what we would intuitively think to do, which is I'm going to click on the eraser tool, and I'm going to click on hard eraser, right? And we're just going to observe what happens. Let's zoom in a little bit, okay? And let's make this a little thicker. So I'm drawing, and it erased, right? Like intuitively, this did what we expected, right? I haven't let go of the mouse yet, though. Let me let go. And, oops, sorry, my mistake. I'm going to uncheck vector eraser. Let's just see what happens, okay? It did erase, but you notice it produced these nodes here. What's going on? This is one of these weird things that Clip Studio does. I never use this feature. It actually creates an erasing stroke. Like that's an actual full stroke, but it doesn't lay paint. It removes paint. It removes pixels. So that's a weird effect with Clip Studio. I don't use this. What I use is I enable this checkbox that says Vector Eraser. Okay? Right here. Now let me undo this change. And we're going to try several things with Vector Eraser. Okay? And I'm going to... There are different Vector Eraser options. I am going to... this is sort of like the one that'd be intuitive for you, which is erase touched areas. Okay, let's try it out. So I'll just draw. I'll draw through here and through here. And what happened? It did sort of the intuitively right thing. It actually erased those segments of the lines that I touched. Okay, and because I went through a line, it of course separated into two different segments, two different strokes, up here and up and down here. And you can see there are no nodes connecting these two. They're completely cut apart, okay? That's very useful. Now you would think I would use that to erase, like, let me undo those changes. Oops, I want to, yeah. How would I get rid of this part that goes into the eye? Well, I can use that eraser tool like this, right? And it did it. It actually did it. But, however, it's very easy to accidentally go over, and then it's like you messed it up, right? Okay. So this is where the next setting comes in, which is really what I use, which is the vector eraser, but the setting called erase up to intersection. Okay? So watch what happens here. I want to clean this up real quick. All I have to do is touch and see that section will be erased up to the intersection. Okay. How about this? Bang, erased up to the intersection. What about this little piece up here? Same thing. Boom, done, right? And so you can clean up things pretty easily. Now, of course, if you go over, it's going to erase more than you expected. So you have to be careful what you're touching. That's why when I'm doing this kind of erasing, I often have the show nodes turned on. And also, let me correct this part also. There, okay. Sometimes, let me show you an effect. Oh yeah, I erased something here, but notice what happened here. You probably expect this line to continue through, but it actually let me draw two new lines. It'll be more easy to understand. Let's go over here. I'll draw one line like this, and I'll draw an X, okay? Let's zoom in here. You see how they just cross like an X? Okay, let's erase one of these and just see what happens with the vector eraser. You see that change in the node? So for a reason I don't really know, when Clip does this intersection erasure, the intersection it creates doesn't completely go on the same path. For some reason, their algorithm will actually deflect this angle, left or right or up or down. It doesn't matter. They will do a deflection every time. When what you'd expect is something more like this. Let me get the correct control point tool. You would expect that this, let me find it here. Since these nodes are so close to each other, yeah, you'd expect it to do this, right? And I don't know why they chose to deflect it. There's probably a good reason. Maybe it was hard to find the intersection or something. I don't know. But it's a thing that I wish Clip would not do and just do it the way we think about it, which is just to keep as much of the old line as possible. Having said that, most of the time when it does that, you'll never notice it. Like, it's not visual. You may see the nodes do it, but you wouldn't actually see any negative consequence in the stroke, okay? So I just want to make sure you know about that setting. One other thing to be aware of with the vector eraser, let me get there. Vector is, right? Where is that setting? Brush density. There's another setting here you should just watch out for. Let's see if I can find it. I can't see it right now. Maybe later I'll figure it out. There's an option to like erase the entire line. Maybe it's this setting here. This is probably it. No. Oh yeah, that's what this. I thought it was a checkbox, but it's actually that setting. You can go and just have the entire line deleted, right? Regardless of intersections, right? So let's undo the change, right? And this will just erase the entire line. I stick to intersection, okay? Because that helps me a lot. Because what I do, let me give you an example, a clear example of where I use this all the time. If I have, let's just say, this is an arm, right? There's like some hands there, right? Imagine I have to draw, I don't know, a watch, right? I find it really difficult to do this. I'm doing it for you, but it's like a lot of stress, right? I am always getting this wrong, maybe not touching the line or going over and have to clean it up. It's a real mess. And I'm struggling, right? And I have to very carefully start and look very carefully and move and very carefully end it, right? It's a lot of stress to my mind. Instead, if I had to draw a band of a watch, I would just do this. And then I would get the eraser tool and just stroke and make sure it's set in the middle one. which is erase up to intersection, then just get rid of these two. That's it. Saves my life so much, right? Absolutely one of the best speed up improvements was the vector eraser. Okay, next we have, okay, drawing perfect vector strokes. So hand drawn is of course fine, I draw a lot that way, but someone earlier in the chat said that you can just use the mouse and you can use special tools. You don't have to draw it interactively. And that's where we get the figure tool, which is, I believe that's correct line. Is this the figure tool? Let's check. Nope. I forgot what oh, here it is. It's figure tool. Yeah. So there's many figure tools. There's curve, polyline, continuous curve, Bezier curve, lasso fill, which I never use. And you got rectangles and circles and ellipses like that, and polygons. I rarely use these. I basically do everything with continuous curve. And continuous curve can make polygons. It's not limited. So I go to continuous curve, and under subtool options, I use this one, which is spline. I think it's just the most intuitive for me. There are different options. And I don't have it close the line. Okay, and I set the anti-aliasing. And brush shape I just leave alone. Okay, so let's just try. I'll just draw the same face, right? I'll draw it with a red line. So you can see what it's like. So I'm doing the continuous curve. So I'm gonna Control Z. I'm gonna use the mouse actually. It's a bit easier than the pen. Or it should be. Okay, so I'm gonna get here and let me make it a bit bigger, maybe a 10 point. Okay, so I'm clicking and I let go, click, let go, click, let go, click, let go, click, let go, and double click to end it. And then I just do the same thing. Notice I'm not even worried about the fact that I'm overshooting. I don't care one bit. You know why? Because I know how to use the vector eraser. Oh, I did something there. I overshot here with another node, and I right-clicked to remove the last node. Okay, that's another thing you should realize. I'll just draw a little bit more. So I'm going to hide the, but you get the idea, right? And then I use the vector eraser to just get rid of things, right? That's how I would use this, like that. So this will make things, it'll just make life easier to use this kind of tool. And I said it can do straight lines as well. You don't have to do these, let me see if I can do it here. Sorry, I'm on the wrong tool. Yeah, see if I, first node, click the second node. If I click again, see, instead of curving it, it went from a circle to a square. So the continuous curve, if you click twice for every node, then you can do a polyline, right? So that's why I choose continuous curve and not polyline. You don't need polyline because continuous curve will do what polyline can do, right? So another huge tool. Most of the time when I'm looking for a cleaner look, I use continuous curve. I don't even use the pen. I use an actual mouse for this. Okay, let's see if there's any more notes I have on continuous curve. Okay, now we get into some real productivity things, okay? Let me erase these red lines here. Okay, I'm going to draw some black lines actually, because I want to do some coloring. Oops, I have continuous curve on. I'm just for my sake, I'm going to switch the marker Milli pen. Okay, and then I'll go back to the vector eraser and knock out those little pieces. Okay, so we want this. We want to color this frog green, the normal Pepe colors, Peepo colors. How would you do that? You can't fill these areas on the vector layer because vector layers don't have an equivalent feature for fill. But how would you do it? Well, you'd create a new raster layer underneath, right? Let me go there. And I guess you can just start picking some colors. Let's go ahead and pick one, right? This is probably very similar to what, I'll make the brush a little bit bigger. And I guess you could do this. Oh, sorry, I'm still on the vector eraser. I want this Milli pen. Let's make the brush big. And I guess you could do this. And what problem are you going to have when you do this? You're going to overshoot and you're going to have to carefully erase. It's tough. It's tough business, okay? Very tough business. So let's see if there's an alternative to this. And there is, okay? And that is using the vector layer as a reference layer. So I'm gonna go to the vector layer, and there's this, like, I don't know what this is actually. It looks like a lighthouse. Maybe that is the intended shape, but I'm gonna click the lighthouse, and you can see that now there's a little icon here. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. You can. I think you can have a filled vector shape like a rectangle, but you can't do a pixel raster fill in the middle of it. I may be wrong about that. I've never, if we saw in the figure, you can see one of the shapes is a filled rectangle, right? Like this one. But I rarely use that. Like, I've just never had a case. I just do what I'm showing you here, which is you draw beneath. So you want paint on the raster layer underneath this vector layer. Now watch this. I'm going to click fill, and I'm going to go to white here. Okay. And it filled it in. Now that's interesting. Now I want to show you actually some options here which are very important. I have close gap unchecked. Whether or not you want to check that, we'll talk about. Area scaling is unchecked. That's very important. Refer multiple. Usually I'll set it to just the lighthouse, which just means reference layers. And I definitely check fill up to vector path. And if I open that up, I'll also check include vector path. All those combinations of things produce the correct effect, okay? Let me fill in this up here with a little more color, and we'll start discussing what's going on here. Okay, got the eyes. Let's get the green. Well, something happened now, right? The color bled everywhere. We didn't want that, obviously. We didn't want this. Let's go ahead and we have options here. The simplest is close gap. And if it finds a gap smaller than this, it actually won't bleed. So let's see if that helped. See, it worked. Now, it got the middle of this. There's a gap big enough there. We'll fix that in a minute. But overall, it did a decent job, okay? Here's the other way. I actually do it this way. I actually fix the gaps, honestly. Though, I think probably, I don't know if I need to be doing that. And where's the gap? Sometimes this can be really hard to find. I actually wish Clip Studio Paint had a gap finder so we could like highlight where the gaps are. But here's the gap, and I'm gonna fix it by going to the fix line or correct line, control point, move. I think this is the thing that's causing the problem. And I'm just gonna make it touch that line, okay? And now if I go back to my vector raster layer, and my fill bucket, I'm pretty sure that covers well, I have the wrong color. Let's see. Yep, it correctly. Let me pick this white color, and let me get this kind of color for the Peepo lips, okay? So let's take a look at what actually happened, because it looks correct, but where did it actually create the fill? Let's just turn off the vector layer. So you see it connected. Now, every now and then you'll see it'll miss a little gap here. And almost every time it does that, you can't see it. It's covered by the line, okay? But occasionally, actually, I will clean these up if I'm really paranoid. But the key thing is, it actually went all the way to where the vector layer was, the lines. That's why there's really, most of the time, there's no gaps at all, right? Which is what you want, which is definitely what you want. At least I think you do. And you can see that see how it actually works by making the vector layer a little transparent. Oops, that was the raster layer. Let's make the vector layer a little transparent. Can you see now what happened? The green went all the way to the vector line, right? And the white went all the way to the vector line, and they sort of met in the middle. So that's what's going on here. I use this feature all the time. Okay. Now, that was filling. What else can we do? So, I want to let me just check this menu item here, the wrench icon. Okay. Let's suppose I want to shade the Apu. Right? How would I accomplish this? Let's see, I think Nick has from vector science point, this kind of filling is disgusting, but for illustration purposes, you can use whatever's comfort for you. Nick, I think from your comment, you're saying you would like the fill colors to be also vector shapes, right? I think that's what you're getting at, which I can totally understand. This is this is one thing I think this is not the way you do it in Illustrator for sure. This is a very different style of doing things. But it has its own benefits, which I'm about to show you. Let's try shading the Apu, okay? So there's different techniques here on shading. Let's just do the one that probably comes to most people's minds, or at least one of them, which is selecting the color. So I'm going to click on the, I'm going to click on this, what is it called? The auto select, okay? And I always do this apply to connected pixels only. And tolerance 0, area scaling nothing, refer multiple nothing. Anti-aliasing, I turn that off. For this kind of image, I turn it off. So what I want to do is I'm just going to select the green, right? I'm going to create a new layer for shading. And then I'm going to color it, okay? And I'm going to move it underneath the vector layer so it looks kind of normal. So let's pick the green, and I'll make a darker version. And again, I'm going to show you options here. Okay, so let's just color this in a bit. The opacity is not correct here. Let's go. Okay, here we go. Now I'm on the right layer. Okay, now notice what happens. The dark color, I am painting outside the green, but of course the selection is forcing the color to only draw on the green, okay? Totally makes sense. I use this technique. There are other techniques, okay? So let me undo this. And I'm going to deselect, okay? So now if I draw that green, it's bleeding everywhere. Or not bleeding, but it's not limited to the green. We have options here. And it is actually, if I take any brush, they have this setting called anti-overflow. And you got to enable this, do not cross the lines of reference layer. Now, watch this. This gets a little tricky, so we'll try two cases. We'll try starting in the green, okay? Okay, so obviously this is correct, nothing weird. Now let me get close to the edge. Watch what happens. Clearly my brush is outside the green area, but the dark green, it just leaked actually for a second. I'll explain why. Let me make the brush real big, because it'll be easier for me to demonstrate this effect. Okay, notice where the center of the brush is. Now I'm drawing, and what happened here? That shouldn't have done that, actually. Maybe, let me make a smaller brush. There. So it's not leaking except at the very edges and things. So what's going on there, right? What's going on there? Let's just make sure the anti-overflow doesn't have any more options. I want to see this. Oh, its tolerance is probably also affecting it. Oh, and area scaling. Yeah, okay, we'll get there. Let me turn on all these things so that everyone can see what's going on. Sometimes I forget that there's other settings affecting. So I'm going to turn off area scaling. That's set. I want to make sure everyone sees all these options. I want both these checked. Fill up to vector path and don't cross the lines of the reference layer. So let's try this again. Hopefully, oops, I accidentally drew that. Let's try this again. Okay. There's a little bit of leakage there, but you get the point. It's not going out. And now the other thing is true. You can draw from the other side. Let me pick a different color. And it won't draw in. This is super convenient, right? Generally, I will use the fill bucket, but sometimes it's actually preferable for this when you're doing shading or things like shading where you need a constraint, right? Another thing, it's not restricted to brushes like this. It's actually the anti-overflow. It's actually even on like the eraser. So let's just make sure we can see it here. Yeah, even the eraser has anti-overflow. And I think the reason it bled here is there's actually a gap somewhere there. So, see? I'm not erasing into the green until I force my brush into the green. If the brush is just coincident, like halfway in, it won't override. So, another great technique, right? One I'd highly recommend for people to learn. Let me erase some of this. And of course, it works with things like let's try doing some shading here. Maybe not the best shading and highlighting in the world, but okay. Again, do not cross lines of reference layer. Turn off area scaling. I want soft. Let's see if there's any other anti-overflow. Tolerance, I want that to be 0 tolerance. And then fill up to vector path. And then let's try adding just some like highlights. Maybe I'll make the brush density a little bit bigger than this. There. Do you see? It's not bleeding over. Maybe hard to see that's not, but you take my word for it. It's not going over the border formed by the vector layer. So this is again a thing that really vector layers are really good at, right? In Clip Studio Paint. Okay, let's see. Okay, got that. Oh, now we're going to talk about converting vector and layers to raster layers. Okay, and this is pretty easy. There's just a couple of different ways to do it. So let's create let me turn off all the shading stuff. So this is a vector layer. How do you make it a raster layer? There are several ways, and then the way that I think is most common is you make sure the layer is selected. Actually, it's not selected. Select it. It's on the vector layer. And I believe it's on the layer menu. It's called Convert Layer. So, layer 4.2 is going to be this is the destination type. So it starts as vector layer, so it's going to end up as a vector layer. But I want to say make it a raster layer. Okay, and there are options here for expression color. We'll get that, and blending, but I'll leave those alone for color and normal. And these settings you don't see yet, but let's just convert it. See the nodes went away, so now vector became a raster. I don't think you ever need to do this realistically, or not commonly is for illustration, but that's how you do it. You can also, I believe, do that conversion from here, right? Convert layer. And there's actually also a special rasterize mode if you don't need to worry about the settings, right? A rasterize command. It's there as well as I believe up here. Yeah, rasterize. But if you want to get, total control, use convert layer. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a raster layer and talk about conversion in the other direction. Okay, so let's draw a stroke. And I'll use the G pen because I want to I want to show something. Let me draw a small one first, actually. So we want this to become, this is a raster stroke, we want it to become a vector stroke. Is this possible? Nick, actually, I think I have loaded one 3D model in my entire life into Clip Studio Paint. And I want to try, I want to learn that more, but I don't have use for it. And I think some people really do use them quite often, from what I've seen. But I think the way I draw, I just don't need that. Not that I'm good with anatomy and proportion for figures, but I just don't draw anything that needs human figures. Okay, so can we convert this to a raster layer? Actually, we can. It's actually very similar. We just go back to layer and we go to convert. Now remember, it starts out as raster, so we have to select vector layer. Now, these settings, color and normal, we're going to leave alone, but vector settings you should pay attention to. Maximum line width, correction, export all in black. Weird things will happen, you'll see. I'm going to leave this as export all in black. Anti-aliasing none. Okay, so we won't go through every setting, but let's just see what happens when I do it. It turned into black, right? But we got an actual vector out of it, which is amazing. Okay, let's undo this and go back and just see why did it turn into black? Well, let's go back to convert layer and vector settings. Oh, so I have to change this to vector. And because it had export all in black, if we uncheck this and try it, it should work. Okay, it actually got the color. Now, this gets a little tricky. I'm going to show you why in a second. I am going to undo that, and I'm going to draw. I think they should trigger the problem, okay? And I'm going to turn on the aliasing to its maximum setting, even though it's not obvious why I'm doing that. Let's just see. I'm just going to draw on top of it, okay? Or let me not draw such a weird shape. Let me just do a very curvy kind of thing, okay? What's going to happen here? It's really interesting. Let's do the same conversion. And then again, color, normal, change this to vector, vector settings, and export. Okay, it's not going to go to black. What will it do? Gave us an error. What's the error say? Cannot convert into a vector layer because the number of colors used in the image exceeds 16. So there is a limitation in Clip Studio Paint where it can't deal with more than 16 colors when it's doing this conversion from raster to vector. But you're probably wondering what the heck is going on. There's only 2 colors. And though I picked 2 colors, but there are actually quite a few more. And the reason there are more is it's anti-aliased here. So what I think is happening is that Clip Studio Paint is seeing, yes, it's seeing the brown, it's seeing the green, but it's also seeing all these blended colors, and there's way more than 16. So it's saying, hey, I can't deal with this, right? I can only handle 16 colors. And so this is a little bit of a limitation in Clip Studio Paint. Now, of course, if you don't care about the colors, you can do the conversion, and it should work if I use if I set vector and then the vector saying, say, export all in black. This should work because it's not paying attention to the color. There you go. But this may not be what you wanted, okay? Let me undo it. Oh. Let's see, Nick's got a comment. Vectorization process is hell when client brings you complex raster logo and asks to vectorize it for printing. Even Illustrator cores are doing it. Yeah, it's really funny. It's I don't have enough of a mathematical background to know why it's so hard, but it is a fiendishly difficult problem for computers and software to do good vectorization. Every time I've seen vectorization, it always it's not the way a human would do it. And actually, since we're talking about this, let me, for the audience, Nick, I think you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. Let me show you. Oops, where's my mouse here? Oh, okay. Let me show you where you see vectorization fall down. Okay. And I'll just draw two different things here. I'll draw. Let's get the marker here. And the Millipen. Yeah. Yeah. Oops, I need one more. Okay. Let's suppose I just did this. Okay. A vectorization software would probably vectorize this as an oval or a circle. It'd be correct, right? In other words, you'd get a shape that was a circle, right? And if I do this, let me pick a different color, right? This is interesting because what vectorization software will give you, which is correct, but as a human, you'd never draw it this way. It would give you this. Let me draw it in a very small, with a very small brush here. I'll draw it as two separate pieces. It would draw essentially, what vectorization would give you is this. One shape like that, and I'll draw them separately. Another shape like this. Of course, it'll put them next to each other, right? But what you'd expect if you're really doing, if you're drawing this as a logo, like, I don't know, I guess it's like the MasterCard logo, you would actually expect it to give you two circles that are overlapping, right? Because that's how you'd actually draw it as a human. You'd probably not draw the circle behind as a moon shape that's just perfectly matched to the circle in front. And this is a problem that it's this fundamental thing about how vectorization seems to work. All the algorithms just don't do it the way a human would do it, right? And so every time I've tried a tool that vectorizes for me, I have just never been happy with the results. And for simple stuff, they're fine, but like I think lots of logos, they just don't do that great on. They don't keep line consistency. You see artifacts. Obviously, you get this kind of error, which is at least understandable because this is sophisticated, right? Maybe AI will figure it out. Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about with rasterization. Let's delete this. Okay. Let's see, Nick has another comment. Or just feed him rasterized letter symbol. It will turn it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is surprising that it hasn't gotten more advanced. I mean, the state of the art has not changed. Has not changed. Okay, now there's another thing that happens when you're rasterizing, which is weird, but it's expected. I mean, I just want you to have expectations around it. Let me create a really big region, okay? It's a big stroke, okay? And it's kind of like a stroke like this, okay? Now notice how thick it is. That's very important, okay? But essentially it's a stroke that's kind of going to the right and down a little bit, okay? Let's try to rasterize it. Or vectorize it, sorry. We'll do convert, change it from raster to vector, and see what happens. Okay. So what happens here is at a certain size, it won't think of it as a stroke. It'll think of it as an area, and then it'll draw a vector shape for the edges. And this is not bad, but like, you know, this may surprise you. You may have expected a big, perfect stroke to come out as a one vector line, not an enclosed shape, right? So you just got to keep that in mind, that this is one of the outcomes. You might be able to control it somewhat, but I just want you to know this is something to watch out for. Okay, let's see. Okay, one more thing I want to cover is merging the layers, just so people know the math here. So let me unrasterize that, or unvectorize that. And so that's raster, red is raster. And then on top of it, I'm going to add a vector layer with a blue stroke, okay? So red is raster, blue is vector, okay? So basically, again, this is more like just bookkeeping. If you can merge down layers. Let me find my mouse here. Okay. If I go here and right click here and say merge down or merge layers, merge with layer below, when you combine a vector and raster layer, they will merge as a raster layer. So it rasterizes vector layers. That's why I tend not to do this, right? I tend not to do this. But sometimes it's useful. Certain effects are easier to do with vectors, and then I'll merge. But generally I do line art. I just use vectors for lines I use vectors. That being said, I also, sometimes if there's decorative things, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. I might do some lines in raster because they make more sense that way. Like they're easier to control. Like for some reason I'll do that with eyelashes. I don't know, with some pictures. Or things that are lines, but they're really like specular highlights, that kind of thing. I'll do that as a raster, of course. But for like the actual shape of the overall object, I will use a vector. Okay. Okay, I think we covered every topic for vector layers in Clip Studio Paint. And I think we did it. I think we actually did it. I can't believe it. And I feel very good now. I did this video a year ago, but doing it all live in front of you reminded me of a bunch of things that I sort of totally forgot about how vector layers work. So this is good for me as a refresher. What I think I'm going to do is, you know, because I ramble a little bit in these live streams, I think instead of doing one big Clip Studio Paint vector video, I think I'm going to do small pieces. I think what I have here is like 17 chapters. That's a lot to do in one big video. It's a lot of video editing, which I don't like to do. I think I'm going to do small chapters, like, and maybe like, you know, I can do 2 in a day or something. But I'll try to create a full sort of course. They'll also make it easier for me to deal with corrections to certain pieces. Okay, so hopefully I can get that done over the next month. I want to get a lot of videos prepped for the holiday buying season. And so this is one I definitely want to do because so many people are using Clip Studio Paint. And with that, everyone, I want to thank you for your time. I might actually stream later tonight, but I wanted to keep this one focused on Clip Studio Paint and vector layers. Thanks, everyone, for joining the stream. You know, I love to have a conversation with you all and learn your techniques as well. And this was just a perfect opportunity for that. So everyone, have a great night. And again, I think I'm going to be streaming later tonight. Not sure when, maybe much later in the evening. But then I might just do some chit chat on various topics. Everyone, have a great night. I'll see you soon. Bye.